Well, welcome everybody to the penultimate week of Formula G. We are in week 9 in Russia. I am Zotomo, and I'm joined as always by Calamity. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing better than I did when I finished Russia. How are
That's
you?
good to know. I might say the same thing. Yeah, I'm pretty sure every day of the year I'm doing better than when I just played Russia. So, yeah, definitely doing pretty good today. But yeah, Russia, its own unique challenges. Fun or not, it's kind of maybe a personal choice, but definitely saw some surprises this week. So we'll take a look at those after we jump into these locations. So with that, location number 1, Calamity,
Yeah.
pretty famous in terms of Russian locations.
Is it?
It's the oil fields, right?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. So yes, over by Surgut, that kind of patch, they all kind of look the same. It's all oil companies, refineries, dirt roads.
Okay.
So you get one of those kinds of locations, and you just scroll around that small city that pops up at a pretty high zoom level, so you can find it pretty easily.
Yeah. I just went a couple, what is that? A couple 100 meters to the west. There were big signs telling me Khanty-Mansiysk, which is at least famous for biathlon. I don't know if there's anything else in there. Which was 600 kilometers to the north, and then Tumen was 400 to the south or something like that, which, well, pretty much told us where exactly we are. And there was also a sign there that told us we were in the city of Turtas, which, made it not too difficult to find.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there were better signs, of course, but just the look and feel of the place immediately gave you the region, at least for me, to look. I failed to find the little city, but I did see those signs for Tumen and whatnot, so I was in the general vicinity, just didn't get the 5K for that one. But yeah, definitely something worth noting. That area kind of looks like an oil field.
I don't know what an oil field looks like, so I'm not sure if that'll help me.
Okay, you have to Google some pictures of that
Okay.
to see what those look like. But yeah. Anyway, on to round number 2.
Yeah.
Way down in almost near the Caucasus. Is that the Caucasus, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's sort of a weird area for me, because I don't think I really ever paid much attention to what this area looks like, because it's sort of the middle area between the complete desert that is to the northeast of it, towards the border of Kazakhstan, and the sort of very green mountainous area that's to the other side, to the west and south.
Yeah.
So purely based on landscape, I had no idea what this looked like, and I didn't find much. I found out we are in the city of Georgievsk, which I've never heard of. And yeah, I found pretty much nothing else for the 5 minutes. And well, yeah.
Yeah, same. Just found the little village name. Good luck finding that on a map. Wide open plain, sort of dry, which is that whole Kazakhstan border all the way from almost Moscow all the way down. So you're like, well, this is going to be fun. And yeah, I didn't find it. So I think that was way off. I was near Samara or something in my guess. Let me pull it up again. But no, actually, I was further north. I was almost up by where we were in round 1. Just because I was like, it's sort of dry, sort of isn't. Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, I didn't really see much that, gave me the feeling, okay, it's very dry here. If I had, I would have probably gone somewhere in that area. But yeah, it's just an unfortunate round for me.
Yeah. For a lot of people, we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah.
Location number 3.
Location number 3
A little bit
was
nicer.
on a highway relatively close to the city of Perm, which was also just on a sign, not too far away, to the west. I think it was probably on a sign to the east as well, but I found the one on the west, and it also told us that we were, I think it told us we're somewhere between Perm and Kazan, and it told us that the city of Krasnokamsk is to our south, And then I spent about 2 minutes starting Kazan, of course, as always, starting on the wrong direction, in the wrong direction. Looking along the E22, and eventually I realized that Krasnokamsk is just really big and would have stood out if I hadn't, zoomed in all the way to try and look for it. But yeah, I think actually everyone except for you got 5k in that round.
Yeah. I did the same thing you did. I was like, oh, well, we're somewhere in between Perm and Kazan, and then spent the whole time skimming way too far south.
Yep.
And at the last minute realized that Krasnokamsk was right next to Perm, and then my timer ran out. So I was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. So yeah, I was literally like, I think I might, in my video, I might have even been mid-sentence when my timer ran out and was like, oh, never mind. So, yeah.
We started on a bridge over a river, so it was super easy to pinpoint. But yeah, those 11 points you lost there, they weren't making much of a difference, were they?
No. But it was by far, I think, the easiest location of all of them. Plenty of road signs for every direction because we were really close to a sort of major interchange on a major road, so that really was nice. What really sucked was there was no distances. It would have been nice to know that Perm was
true.
50 kilometers away while Kazan was like 400 or whatever it is. So
yep.
But yeah. Round 4 saw us travel not too far away, just northeast of Nizhny Novgorod.
Yeah. That was pretty much the only round where I have some regrets, maybe, or some, I don't know the English word for it, but apparently, well, there were a couple of signs there for bigger cities in the area, but they just, none of them had any kilometers, so you couldn't really tell by the sign how far away they were or how big they were. And one of those was the city of Yoshka Ola, which I had never heard of before. But it does have 250,000 people living in it, so I might remember it for the future. But yeah, since I had never heard of it before and I didn't find anything useful apart from like a couple of city names, nowhere near for that one either.
Yeah, that was the big city you could easily find at a large zoom level. But again, I spent most of my time looking just too far south. And so it never appeared on my screen. And when my timer ran out and it showed me where we were, I was like, oh, there it is. Very big city right there. And I just had my screen too far south the whole time.
Yeah.
The location made me feel like we were south of that like Moscow, Kazan latitude. And so I was zoomed in down there looking in that kind of Moscow, Kazan, Saratov kind of triangle, and just didn't see it. So
yes, I spent most of my time trying to look for anything that would help me rather than looking for to me what I thought was like very small cities somewhere on the map with like no chance of ever finding them. And yeah, that didn't pan out. I didn't find anything.
Yeah, I mean, if I learned anything from this is just there are lots of big cities in Russia that
no one's ever heard of.
don't show up on the map when you're zoomed out very far, and 2, no one's ever heard of before. Yes. Like even people who are well versed in international stuff, we know St. Petersburg, Moscow, Nizhny Novgorod, Perm or something, but something like Yoshkar Ola, we no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just it's just a thing of you play more and more, and eventually every time you get one of these Russian cities that you've never heard of, you'll try to remember it, and eventually in 10 years you'll know all of them.
Eventually, yeah. And Russia is just so big too. Like if you learn a lot of major cities in like Romania, Bulgaria, you can pretty much catch them pretty easily. Yeah. But if you're on the wrong half of the country, then good luck. So with that, but yeah. Anyway, round 5 was by far, for me, maybe the second most obvious location just based on geography. So.
Yeah, for some reason, I just completely blanked on the fact that this area of Russia has mountains, which is maybe not the smartest thing to do when you consider Sochi hosted the Winter Olympics, which would be kind of hard to do without mountains. So I kind of just went. I knew that the area, like along the border of Mongolia and sort of eastern Kazakhstan, has a lot of mountains and looks very similar to this. So I kind of went there and looked for the cities that, were on signs around us. And yeah, didn't find them. Got no points again, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, besides, for me at least, the oil fields, this is pretty obviously the Caucasus Mountain down there by Sochi. And so I found a few what I hoped were bigger city names. They weren't. So again, wasted a lot of time scanning the map, looking for small roads. We were following a river the entire time, and then as I zoomed in, I realized there was rivers everywhere.
Yep.
As mountains tend to have in every little valley. So like, well, that's not going to help me either. And the names of rivers, even the big rivers, don't show up until you really zoom in. So that was just, I found an area that had a few bigger rivers and gambled, and I wasn't too far off, but given the size of Russia, it was still significant. So, yep. So that's the kind of the story of Russia. Oh, I found some stuff. Am I going to be able to find it on a map?
Nope.
Maybe. If you're really lucky, or if you practice Russia a lot. But yeah, what was really interesting though, 2 locations right in the area around, in the south next to Georgia. One in the oil fields, which is very representative of Russia, so good for that. And then 2 in kind of that Perm, Nizhny Novgorod area. Nothing up near St. Petersburg or whatnot. And no real urban areas. We were in a few small towns on the edge, but very open road for the most part. So, and as we get to the scores later, it was very much a feast or famine kind of situation, either getting almost perfect scores or almost no points at all for a lot of the drivers this week. So
I've kind of, as I've said before, I don't really have anything where I would say, oh, I did this so badly, I should have, because even if I gotten 5k in one of the locations where I messed up, I still wouldn't have been anywhere near the points. So, yeah. I've got no regrets.
Yeah, it's one of those of you either knew Russia well enough or you didn't, and there's not a whole lot of Geoguessr skill, maybe, that would come into it, other than having played the country a lot. Enough experience, I think, was the big decider here. Anyway, let's look at our sprint location, which was definitely a lot more manageable, given that it was only one city, and actually quite easy to learn, as I found out as I was playing the sprint race, and not before, like I should have. Yeah, so can you give us a brief rundown of those locations as you had them, Calamity?
Yeah. It started off for me in round 1, relatively close to sort of the main road going through Sochi. Well, at least for me, the main road. This the road where you'll find most of the locations, which is called Kurotny Prospect. Sort of a bit starting to go up the mountain. That is to the east of Sochi, and probably a good thing if you didn't go into the wrong direction here, because going into the wrong direction, which is very possible, would have pretty much got you nowhere. But yeah, if you know a bit about Sochi, if you're going to have to head down the mountain to get anywhere. And it wasn't too difficult to figure out. You had a small footpath that was right next to your starting location, which made it relatively easy to pinpoint as well. Also, something that's worth noting is that since Sochi is a relatively European-oriented city, you'll find lots of Latin alphabet everywhere. You usually don't need Cyrillic. You'll find some street signs as well that have only Cyrillic, or maybe less street signs, but sometimes on houses, you'll find the street name that's only written in Cyrillic. But usually if you move a bit further, you'll find some street sign somewhere that has it in Latin as well. So yeah, that one was a very doable location, unless you walked up the mountain. We then went on to location 2, which I messed up completely, because I was being stupid. it wasn't a difficult location. We were on Gagarina Street, which runs through the district of Gagarina. And I walked south for about a kilometer, maybe not quite. And then you get to a big roundabout, which is in front of a very big and, well, very recognizable hotel. And I went, oh, I know that. Went on Gagarina Street, looked at a side street, which was called Krasnoarmeyskaya Street, and saw, oh, that's right here, right off Gagarina Street to the west. Yep, it makes a turn here. Yep, looks about right. And I made my guess about 1:20 in, with a minute left. And then I realized I had traveled about 1 kilometer to the south to get to that roundabout and not 2 side streets. So I was about 1 kilometer off, because Krasnoarmeyskaya Street is a street that goes on for a while and is not the name of only one street, but a couple of side streets as well. And pretty much a very similar situation to what we have down here is up near our starting location. Then we got into round 3, which, yeah, it was one of the easiest locations you can get in Sochi, because it was at the southeast corner of a park. And you've got exactly 2 parks in Sochi that are rectangular, and they're right next to each other. So you kind of just looked at what street names you've got, and then you checked 2 parks, and you were right there. That's about it for that one. And you can also, if you walk to the west, you could see the harbor. So that made it even easier. Then round 4 came along, and that was my second failure. This case, not by being too hasty, but by just wasting time and then not, putting together all the information I got in my head. I walked north first, got to a big, highway junction with some on-ramps. And, these are pretty tricky in Sochi, because they usually tell you street names that they can be relatively far away. So it told me that we were on the, what did it tell me? Kind of forgot. The ulica Konstitucji. Even if I don't remember if it told me we were on there, but it told me that's that way. And then I went back to the start, went back to the west, found out we're somewhere near the river. And then, and with somewhere near the river, I mean 500 meters to the east of it, because I traveled that distance to the river. Then I somehow forgot about that I traveled that distance, not about the river, and guessed too far north along the river for some reason. And yeah, that was that. And then round 5 was near the Zimny Theatre, which I had seen before while practicing, so that took me 13 seconds to guess right. But it was pointless at that point.
Yeah, my order, of course, is a little bit different. You mentioned in your first round that if you went the wrong way, it was not going to be nice.
Yep.
I went the wrong way.
Nice.
I'm looking at my tracker, my path tracker. I hit 4 dead ends because of my genius Geoguessr play along the way. And I figured, well, we were in the mountains somewhere, and I said maybe it didn't look too urban. So I kind of chose somewhere a little bit further south, and they were all clumped up in the main part of the city, and so I was way off. What was really interesting is round 4 for you, I barely had to move, because when you went a little bit north, there was a very distinctive building, and the road name was very obvious. So was it Gorkong? Koga. And so I was like, oh, well, I know where that road is, because from a previous round, and I zoomed in on it, and oh, look, there's a very distinct U-shaped building. Zoom in, find the intersection, done.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I never found out what the street name we were on was.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It just adds to me playing terribly for that round.
And then the other rounds I was just off because of slow pinpointing / not practicing. I got my orientation wrong on the park, so I was on the wrong corner of a nearby park, and it's just yeah. But you did have a little bit more time than me, but I think that doesn't excuse my my performance at all.
How much time did you have?
But I had 2 minutes 10 seconds. I think you had 2:20.
Yes. Those 10 seconds didn't matter much, I don't think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but yeah, definitely. I think one, as you mentioned, 1, 2, 3, probably 4 of them were easily 5Kable, especially with a little bit of practice. And then maybe 1 or 2 might have given some people a little bit of difficulty depending on the player, but
they were all easily pinpointable. Yeah, some of them, especially round 1, they might not have been easy to find, but the pinpointing itself was pretty easy for all of them.
Yeah, maybe that's a better way to put it, is once you had the information, it was easy, but it could have been a little tricky to get the information with, like, me, who just went the wrong way up the mountain and dead end, and pretty much just gave up, being frustrated with the road pathing. So, okay, well, let's take a look at what all these locations meant for the actual standings for the drivers here.
Do we really have to?
Yes, we do. As we get into the feature race here, we will notice that nobody in the feature race got 25K. In fact, Simi, the best driver, only 22,856. So a very challenging seed for him. But he does get another P1 for Oberhausen. Definitely worth mentioning here, Shumio Beloza and Slovak Goli taking second and third, a double podium for Opava, and Slovak's first podium of the season coming in Russia, so he'll be really happy with showing up on a challenging seed, to say the least. Tal and Paula closed, rounding out that top 5. Kasarivatsa, Mr. Blue, and M the Baseman in 10th and 9th respectively. Me down there in 13th, and yeah, Calamity, don't look down in 18th.
I'm not looking.
So yeah, very rough a week for quite a few people though. Jack, Steal This, Nick, Wakelock also getting pretty low scores. Of course, Redect and Sir Lemon's DNSing this week. So yeah, very good week for Opava and Oberhausen.
Yep.
Calamity.
That's pretty much us as FGT Racing guaranteed to finish last in the constructors standings. Yeah, Shumio Beloso again, kind of doing his thing of a podium or bust.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very good week for Slovak goalie as well. And yeah, you said it was interesting that not only did we not get a perfect score, we didn't even get near one, with not even 23K for anyone. And it was pretty easy to pinpoint at the locations that were the problems at sort of round 2, 4, and 5. But interestingly enough, it wasn't just one round for everyone. You kind of, like, for every location that we had, a few people managed to find it. Like for round 2, we got Simi, Barry Fishy Bear, and M the Baseman all getting like within, a kilometer or so. Round 4, we got perfect scores from Closed and Giovanni. And round 5, we got perfect scores from Simi and a relatively close guess from Giovanni. So the potential was there to get a perfect score, but it just didn't pan out in the end.
Yeah, but I mean, we said it in our preview last week that Russia would definitely be a challenging place. Even when you get information, it can be hard to find on the map. So yeah, definitely it shook things up. It is worth mentioning your team partner, Emwicholm, did pretty well. 8th place there for him, so he picks up a few points, even if you weren't able to. So doing pretty well. I think he posted on Reddit that he was quite happy with his performance and not letting his team down, in the sense that he does pick up a few points over the course of the season, not leaving it all up to you. So he was a bit happy with himself with that. But yeah, very nice. And let's take a look then at the sprint race results. We did have 2 perfect scores here. Jack and Closed getting perfect scores. Jack 10 meters closer though, so he'll take that P1 position. What's really worth mentioning here is Orpheus and Tal and Paula for Scanstrom, both in the top 5, along with Oberhausen, which means they will get a lot of team points for that race, while their closest competitor, Katsuruvatsa, M the Baseman, and Mr. Blue kind of way off the target here for that one. But.
Yeah, I've mentioned it before while talking about the sprint race locations. I was really mad about myself for that one because that should have been a relatively easy 25k. And I just, messed it all up. You can see there Jack, pretty much the opposite to his feature race, where he finished 17th. He got the win here. Other than that, nothing too surprising, I'd say.
What might be interesting here is that the time given didn't seem to really be a factor in this one. The people with the least amount of time, Steal This Nick, Jack, Wakelok, and Giovanni, are kind of all over the place. As well as the people with the most amount of time, M the Baseman, M Wickholm, Slovak Goalie, also scattered out throughout the field. So it pretty much looks like, did you practice or not?
Yeah.
Maybe. And time was not going to be a factor. Even the people with the least amount of time with practice were going to be able to get that 5K. And if you didn't know what you were doing, all the time in the world wasn't going to help you. Well, maybe all the time in the world would have helped you. But
probably.
But within our time constraints anyways, even the longest amount of time, which was about 3 minutes and 10 seconds, 3 minutes 20 seconds, wasn't going to make much of a difference for the drivers. So yeah, I definitely wish I would have practiced. I think I could have easily gotten probably 10,000 points just from practicing 1 or 2 games. And that would have put me up in the standings for sure. So I think that's the big divide.
Yeah, it was a pretty easy seed as well. So yeah, definitely. You could have had much worse locations.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we were next to major roads or landmarks for a lot of them, or if not, we were within a couple 100 meters of intersections or something to give you enough clues to backtrack your way to a 5K. So well done from Ben there on picking those locations for this week. So, well, let's look at what this means for the driver standings going into the final week next week in America. Closed extends his gap a little bit at the top. Mr. Blue falling all the way down to third for him. Tall Impala and Simi rounding out the top 5. With Slovak picking up quite a few points in his feature race, he jumps to 17th with 17 points. How about that? But it does see me then, unfortunately, carry off the bottom of the chart with only 4 points from my last week. I was hoping not to be last, but with him picking up points, I don't think I can jump over anybody else. We'll see how I do in America next week, but Calamity, you staying where you always are, dead right just outside of the top 10 for that. But probably big moves here for Simi was probably the most noticeable jump up to 5th place with that and with his performance in the feature race. So
I'd say it's kind of at this point though still down to the top 4 on who's going to win it, even with his pretty good point haul this week for Simi. I think being 42 points behind is just too much to catch up in one remaining race. Tall Impala with 22 points behind, that could very much still happen. Everyone else is pretty much just, fighting for pride and honor and nothing else at this point. For the driver standings, at least, we'll take a look at the constructor standings and we'll see if any of the other results might still matter at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the drivers who are kind of out of the driver cup, so to speak, definitely still have a lot to play for in the constructor challenge. But yeah, like you said, pretty much the top 4 are going to be fighting for that top place next week in the U.S. Actually, the constructor challenge, as we take a look at that, is very interesting. It's indeed, because I think we can call it Oberhausen's got it. The point gap was really big. What we had last week was Skanstrom or Kasarvatsa possibly being able to make a challenge if both their drivers did well. Scanstrom did have a pretty good sprint race, but they weren't very good in the feature race, and Kasservatsa was all over the place in both of them.
Yeah, and it
So
also
they didn't move at all.
yeah, it also
so.
just depended on Oberhausen having a bad weekend. They had anything but.
Oh, they had anything but, yes. Yeah. Other than that, the middle of the field, I think, stays exactly the same. Lancaster, Octane, Bamberg, and Nordhagen. A little bit of shuffling in the bottom. FGT does fall, with Opava taking that double podium in the feature race. Puts them level on points with 109 with Chariot. So me and Berryfish Bear will definitely be fighting to keep our third from the bottom place from Opava. But other than that, the places are pretty well cemented. Maybe a little bit of movement there in Lancaster, Octane, and Bamberg, but I think that might be about it, given the consistency and the performance of the drivers throughout the first 9 weeks. So yeah.
Yeah, it's
Anything from you?
it's actually looking less hopeless for us than I thought. 23 points is something that I could imagine making up if Opava doesn't, get another double podium. But I mean, with how the race has gone in Russia, I'll at least have the second longest timer for I think it's Austin that we're doing for the sprint race in the US. So given with how US cities are usually not that hard to figure out, I'm hopeful that I can maybe pull off a perfect score, depending on what sort of locations we get there. And, if we don't get any trekker locations in the park somewhere where time isn't going to help.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not good at the US, but with 5 minutes, I should be able to find most of the locations. It'll obviously depend on what seed we get. But I do have hope still for a potential 8th place finish, as unlikely as that may be. But yeah. And yeah, as you said, might be a bit of shuffling between 4th to 6th. Apart from that, we might get a change still on the podium. Technically, depending on the performances, Kasarivatsa, Lancaster, that's not too much of a gap. And same goes the other side as well, from Kasarivatsa to Skanström. But yeah, as you said, at Oberhausen, they're 85 points ahead. It's still technically possible you can get 90 points in one race, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, mathematically, I guess just how the math works, it is possible down to the last race, but we haven't seen Oberhausen have a point deficit to any other teams of that magnitude all season. So I don't think it's going to happen. So
it's actually it's actually 95 points as well. I forgot about the 5 points for the fastest 25k.
There is a bonus points, which nobody got this week because nobody got 25k in Russia. So it's still up for grabs next week, though. So yeah, let's jump into that American map, because I think we have a little bit to talk about, because it is the final week. There's quite a bit riding for maybe not the main title challenges, but a few of those mid-pack and bottom-of-the-pack competitions for pride and honor, as you put it. We're going to be on the U.S. map, no blurry. I forgot. It's by Simi. Yeah, I forgot to put that in there. Sorry. Average score of 17,326. It's been played 82,599 times. This is a very popular map. Over 10,000 locations and over 2,000 likes. I think it's popular simply because everybody who plays America hates the potato cameras on the official maps. So this is a very good alternative, right in the name, no blurry. So it's definitely going to get a lot of attention. So, but definitely a good map. So I'm looking forward to it. Anything from you on the US as a map, Calamity?
It's gonna be interesting. I say this pretty much every time, but it's gonna be very dependent on what locations we get, and whether it's gonna be possible to find all of them in 5 minutes. There'll be some locations that wouldn't be easily pinpointable. Most of them, like in around the area of something like Nevada or something. But apart from that, it should, if we don't get any locations there, it should be easy. Not easy, but we should definitely see some perfect scores, unlike in Russia. But at the same time, the US has a lot of very rural areas where
Yes.
unless you have some means, such as number plates or like highway shields, or stuff like that, or area codes if you're that crazy and learned all of them. Because as far as I know, they don't follow any system in the US. Um,
Yeah,
unless
I
you've got
mean, they
something
sort
like
of do,
that.
but
Yeah, you're gonna struggle if we get into a really rural location.
Mhm. Yeah, America, just like maybe Russia last week, you have a possibility of being somewhere and traveling 5 minutes and never seeing a major sign.
Yep, definitely.
So, especially in the Midwest or even the Southwest, can be tricky like that. Definitely, but again, just like Russia, learning your geography can really help. Where's the major mountain ranges? Where are the river valleys? What does the South look like? What does the desert look like? Can help you narrow down your searches. But
Mm,
um, yeah,
you yeah.
America is always a love hate relationship. You have very really good fun games and then games where you just hate and want to quit GeoGuessr completely because you're like, how could America be so difficult? But especially for even Americans, we don't always like it. So
Yeah, and
but,
just a little fun fact, because I said I'm bad at the US earlier. Recently, like yesterday, in a just a random fun tournament, I had a location in the US where we had a minute of time, and I found a sign that said, you're in New Orleans, and at that point I had like 30 seconds, and I couldn't find New Orleans. Um,
oh,
so yeah, kind of actually similar to me at least as Russia. Less so
mm,
in the fact that I don't recognize these city names, but more so that even if I do recognize the city names, it can be pretty difficult to find if you have no idea where they are, because the US doesn't lack big cities.
yeah. I guess that's one advantage and one thing I don't really think about being from America. Like if I see any city of decent size, I at least have a vague inkling of where in the country it is. I might not know exactly like is it north or south of the state, but I know it's like, oh, it's in
Mm,
Mississippi or it's in Kansas or something. And then I can just zoom in and do a little bit of scanning to find out exactly where in the map it is.
yeah,
But probably a little bit of home field advantage for that. But
yeah.
I know what you mean because I mean I live in Japan. For
Mm,
people who don't know, even though I'm American, and Japanese tell me all the time. I asked them about America, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know like Los Angeles and New York
mm,
and maybe Miami." And I said, "Oh, where are they?" And I have no idea.
yep, pretty much.
Like if I, yeah,
I recognize most of the cities by name if I see a sign for them, but ask me where they are. I don't have a clue. Somewhere in
yeah,
the US.
I think some Japanese would put Los Angeles and New York like within 100 kilometers of each other or something
Okay,
because they
I'm
don't really
I'm I'm
show where
not
they
that
go.
bad.
But okay, maybe that's too small, but yeah, you get my meaning there. But yeah, so I know I'm really excited. I think it'll be an interesting experience for me, just being a native, to see what I can do and if I can actually defend myself on some home soil a little bit. Um, but on the other end, Austin as a sprint race location. Yes, it's an American city. Yes, American cities are sort of laid out well.
Sort
Um,
of.
but my problem with big cities like Austin is that you can often just get suburban sprawl
Yeah.
where it's not dense. You can't tell how close to the center you are. Um, I mean, Austin is big enough where it has like suburbs and they have names and things like that, so you can
Mm,
maybe use them. But I've had games in cities like this in America where it's just like, oh, well, major U.S. city, small road names. I have no idea.
yeah, it'll depend a lot on if you
So,
can if you can find numbered roads. Um,
mm,
Probably also helpful if you know not necessarily where districts are, but you at least know of their existence as a name, so that if you see one of them, you can at least go look at the map. Okay, I know this is a district. Let's look for it. Whereas if you had never heard of it, you might just feel like this is just a random name, maybe of a building or something. Um, yeah, and then as I said before, it depends on if we get any locations like a park or something, as we did in Singapore.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
I think it depends a lot on the time as well. If you have above 2 minutes, I think we'll definitely see some 25Ks, almost regardless of where the locations are. If we go lower than that, it could get tricky.
Yeah, I could agree with that. Yeah, because even just kind of looking at the map here, I think if you're in Austin city limits, if you travel for a minute in any direction, you're going to hit something big. It's pretty blocky, major roads every couple blocks. So even if you go quotation marks, the wrong way, you will hit a somewhat major artery that you could see from a high zoom level and use that to be able to work your way in. So I definitely think it'll be doable, but the time, of course, will be a bit of a factor. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's a great final week. Let's put it that way. Has the potential to be both interesting and destructive for morale in the same setting. So definitely will give us a nice finish to the Formula G season. So yeah, well, we'll see you all then. Take care.
Bye.